Hello everybody, it's Reggie Time here, and today I have a special guest on a video with me. His name is Peter. He's also known as Characters in the online world. As you can see, he's a long-time, very well respected grinder school instructor. He also has his own website, and yeah, I'm pleased to have him around. He's going to be looking over my game today and kind of coaching me a little bit, because he's certainly more experienced in coaching than I am, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully benefiting from having an experienced player like him look over my game. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So
Yeah, hey guys, how's it going? My name's Pete, also known as Characters in the online world. Those are my details on screen there. And yeah, looking forward to it, man. Hopefully we can do a little bit of leak busting, have a look at your game. I'm sure your game will be more solid than a lot of my students, but maybe we can still find some things to correct. It should be good.
well, what I've seen from your recent videos is, in fact, the most recent one you brought out was about someone folding too many 3-bets, which is something I don't think I do, but just in general, 3-bet pots are something I know I can definitely improve upon. So how do you go about dealing with people like myself who are pretty good at poker, but perhaps do have some like leaks in the 3-bet pot? 'Cause that's somewhere a lot of people have problems. How do you go about helping people improve like specific parts of their games?
Okay, so what I generally do with a student of any level in the first session is that I will go into their database. As long as they're playing on a site that has a database, we'll use this that allows a HUD and use Poker Tracker or Hold'em Manager. We'll use this approach. And what we'll do is we'll go into their database and we'll filter, run a report with maybe 15 main stats. And I'm talking things that are really meaningful to the way they play. So you're talking things like VPIP, PFR, 3-bet, fold to 3-bet, C-bet, fold to C-bet, one went soft flop, went to showdown, won at showdown. The list goes on. I'll build up a report like this. I'll have a look at their graph with non-showdown winnings, showdown winnings. And what I will do is I'll diagnose maybe 5 or 6 focus areas within the first session that I think my student should work on, because these areas are the most urgent, both in terms of how efficiently they can improve the student's win rate, but also just how severe they are and just how easy they are to fix like straight away, because you want to fix the worst errors and also the errors that are easiest to correct first, because that's how you make the biggest difference to win rate right off the bat. So what I would do with you is I would give you run that report with you if we were doing that kind of session. Today we're just doing a live play, so it'll be slightly different. And I would say these are the problems with your game and talk about how they relate to each other. Maybe you're c-betting too much in 3-bet pots. Maybe it's something more general, just like you're not opening enough of your cutoffs and buttons. Could be anything. So I'll get you those. I'll get you to create tags for those things in your tracking software. You know how you can use the tagging system to mark hands under a certain color or whatnot. So we'll do that in Hold'em Manager, Poker Tracker 4, and then those would be your focus areas for the next week that you'll work on your own. You'd post hands that sort of exemplify these things that we're working on in the student group. So if you've been told to work on increasing your 3-bet percentage on the button, you'll be looking at spots where you could 3-bet more actively in the button. You'll be posting them for me and the rest of the community to then give you feedback, and then you'll maybe get a homework sheet to do as well. And the idea is that by the next week, you've worked on this enough, both in the coaching session and independently, that you've made a lot of progress, and then we can move on to the next set of stuff. Or maybe I don't think you've made enough progress and we'll leave it as a continued goal for the week after. So I try to make it as structured as possible and hone in on the specific areas. 3-bet pots, definitely a tough one, and definitely you're not alone in feeling like you could do with some improvement in those situations.
Excellent. So just before we start, just give me, if I was a prospective student of yours, give us your sale pitch, if you will. What have you done in poker? Where are you at now with your poker? How many people do you work with?
Cool.
Yeah, just give us a bit of an overview of yourself.
Sure. So I started playing poker seriously online in about 2009, and before that, I thought I was like a great poker player. I thought I was excellent. I wasn't. I won at sitting goals. I won at like 25 NL cash. Then I would move up. I'd get my ass handed to me playing like 100 NL and things like that. Back in the day, even when 100 NL on PokerStars was really, really beatable. And so I joined some forums and communities and quickly realized that I wasn't really good at poker and I sucked. And then I sought a bunch of advice from good players. I made a successful charge to the stakes, beating like 200 NL back in 2009, 2010. Made a bunch of money doing that. That was like the first real breakthrough of my poker career as a player. And then I thought, hey, I'll get into coaching because I just love teaching in general. I like explaining stuff. I love to talk, as you can probably tell. So I basically got involved with the website, griderschool.com, and started making videos on there. I've now made over 180 videos. I made my 188th one with a student tonight. Better not time out of those old tables. And so, yeah, I've been an instructor for many years. I've been privately coaching for about 5 years as well. I currently have about 40 students in my private group, which is on Google Plus, that you can join if you hire me for coaching. On my website, you can find out loads more infographs of my poker playing results, testimonials from recent students, results of recent students, and my ethos on how I think poker should be taught and learned. So that's all on my website. But basically, I just think I'm a really experienced coach, and I love working with people. I think I'm also writing a poker book right now, and doing that has really opened my eyes to how poker should be taught in a more sort of logical, procedural way. So I'm building my syllabus, if you like, over the years and learning to be a better coach every day, and still loving what I'm doing after 5 years in the poker coaching business. So yeah, I love what I do. I think I like poker, I like teaching, so put the two together, and it's a good way to make some money. So yeah,
good stuff. And like we said, we recorded a podcast before this. I agree, you have to love it. If you don't love it, you're not going to be good at it. And yeah, it's really refreshing to speak to someone who's still in love with poker after playing such a long time, because I think well, not few and far between, but there's certainly nice to have someone still there talking about, really enthused. Every day you get up, you want to play poker, you want to talk about it, you want to help. That's kind of how I feel too, and it's nice to have found someone who shares that enthusiasm. So I think what we'll do now, we'll just jump straight into it, and I'll kind of just talk about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and if you see me do something you don't agree with, or if you would have done something differently, just ask me to stop. We'll end the hand, we'll sit out, and we'll go back and look the hand over.
So live sweats are a type of session I don't do that often with my students. When I do, I definitely always get them to record it, so it's good that this is going in a video format, because it can be tough, as you can appreciate, to sort of play poker with your own money while listening and trying to absorb what the coach is saying and make decisions at the same time. So I definitely recommend, if anyone does this kind of session with their coach, that you record the session. That's pretty important. And what I always do, one of my parts of my poker teaching ethos, if you like, is that I want my poker teaching to be really student-centered. That's really important, because there's a big difference between knowing something or like understanding something when the coach is saying and having that thing resonate with you and saying, okay, yeah, that makes sense why I should use smaller sizing in this spot. But then can you actually take that and apply it to another spot? Possibly not. So I always get my students to be in the driver's seat. I'll say, tell me what you're doing here. Why are you doing this? I don't just want to give you feedback on your play. I want to give you feedback on your thought process and the thoughts in your head that are making you make the actions you're making. So definitely that's cool for you to speak first and for me then to come back with feedback.
I 100% agree. I think if we just spoon feed people, do this, do that, do the other, without actually saying why, I think it's really poor. I mean, I hate doing live sweats. Some students sometimes want to do them, but I say to people, like, just record every session for the next, between now and then anyone that you play really well in or you do well in, just delete it. Then the problem, there's the sessions where you feel you didn't play very well, or you felt you got put in tons of spots you didn't feel equipped to deal with. They're the ones we should review, because they're the ones where we're going to really find your knowledge gaps. And I do that. I think live sweats, they can be very hit or miss, and quite often you can be talking to the student, they're playing, and it's not going in either. So yeah, I much prefer to, most of the students I work with, I used to do hand history reviews too, but a lot of the time students just pick coolers or bad beats and things, and you don't learn too much from them. So I love the video reviews, because you can pick up things that they don't even know is a mistake. You're like, whoa, what's just happened there? And they've not even realised it could just be something they've missed an isolation raise, or they've made a weak fold. Who knows what it can be? It can be a whole host of things. So I love video reviews. That's why I said
focus areas, because it's so important for the student to know what the leaks are that they weren't aware of before, and for them to be working on that. Oftentimes students think, I send them a questionnaire before they even get going with coaching. And one of the questions in that, there's about 40 questions. One of them is, what do you think the 3 biggest leaks are? And there's always a massive disparity between what the student thinks the most essential leaks are that they have and what their 3 biggest leaks actually are. And I'll say, okay, so you think your biggest leak is not knowing what to do, having 3-bet ace king and miss the flop. that's not that big a leak. A far bigger leak is that you don't actually understand c-betting in general, and it's the more common spots that you're making mistakes in, and not just that one, or something like that. That's why I think hiring you or I for a coach is a good investment for people to make, because they need that direction. They need to be told, as an aspiring grinder, what the things are that they're not aware of that they're doing wrong before they set up in any.
I completely agree, and I think someone like yourself is that the perfect follow-on for a lot of my students. For someone like me, because I make no shame of it. I'm not the sort of player who's going to take someone from 5-0 to 200-0, and the sort of coach I am, and it's how I sell myself, it's how I position myself, is somebody who's really good, patient, and can help people who are just pretty like losing players or brand new. And I think you'd be the sort of ideal person when people are finished with me, when I've took them to a point where I think I can't take you any further. I think I'm going to start recommending that my students go on to you, because I think you are the next rung up the ladder to me, and I think I'm really glad I found you, actually, because I think you're a really good person, because they'll quite often say, where should I go next? Any coaches that can take me on? And until now I haven't really known anybody, so yeah, I think just the way you've outlined it to me there tells me you are definitely somebody who can be a follow-on from me for my students, so I'm really quite excited to see how this is going to go, because I'm hoping you're going to find things in my game. I don't want to do this and get nothing from it. I'm hoping you say, no, that's really not that good. I'm hoping that you don't do too much, because it doesn't look good for me as a coach. But by the same token, I'm hoping you spot some things, because I'm hoping to learn from this. So,
how about I only pull you up on like 1 out of every 10 horrible blunders you make then? That sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, try and avoid a few of them. I'm only kidding. Anything you see, please just point it out.
Cool.
There's no shame in my game at all. Please just do point it out.
Right, let's do it then. Let's fire up a few tables. We can go through your thought process first, and then I will give you some feedback on what I think is going on, what you can improve on, all that kind of thing. You make poker videos, you're used to talking and playing, so you can go ahead and just feel free to rant about every decision you make, no matter how trivial it might seem, and I will either shut up or nod in agreement verbally, or I will give you some feedback on what's actually going on.
No problem. If I think things are standard, I tend not to I'm not going to comment on everything I do. I'm not
going to comment on opening ace jack suited under the gun, because it's kind of incredibly standard.
I've been squeezed. To me, this is just pretty easy for. I've raised under the gun. I think when there's small blind, squeeze.
Do we have any like that tag there? What does that mean? Does that mean like anything about player type?
We've got his stats here. He's 28-18. Not 3-bet out of line. So that means his 3-bet's probably going to be below 5%.
Okay, so if he's 28-18, this is the kind of player whose squeezing range would be very linear and very tight normally. So it would be something like, I agree, this is a fold against this kind of player. It would be something like queens plus ace king, maybe jacks ace queen sometimes. Against such a linear range, a kind of bluff catching hand like ace jack is not going to be good at all. A hand like ace jack suited is going to play really well against a polar range that has too many bluffs in it. If he's bluffing a bunch of suited aces, or he's just bluffing random broadways, there with the squeeze, then you definitely want the flat there. Otherwise, I think against someone that fits that description, you can expect this tight linear range of hands to be his 3-bet range, and that spot, and you have an easy fold, and it equates to you folding a lot of your range. But that's what you want to do against such a player, because he's actually unbalanced and that he just has a value heavy range, so you should exploit that by folding.
Had I opened from the button though, and had I just min raised and he'd have squeezed, but everything would have been just that little bit smaller, I don't think I would have folded there. I think even his ranges are going to be a lot wider, but it's just because I've raised under the gun. He should know that I'm quite a tight regular.
Yeah. So you'll come across a lot of these players who will attack your button raises from the blinds like there's no tomorrow, and then the 3-bet stat might be as low as like 4% against an under the gun open. So you do have to be very careful. You can't just say, oh, this guy's aggressive, therefore I'm going to defend loads of my range to a 3-bet. That's a trap you need to avoid, because you have to appreciate, as you say, the difference between someone's 3-betting range against an early position open and against the button open in a typical steal spot. And people know in 2015 that they should attack button opens and re-steal and all that kind of stuff, and they oftentimes just haven't even developed a bluffing range against an under the gun open. So it's a huge difference. Totally agree.
Now these sort of hands, I will play them very differently depending on who's to act behind me. If there was, say for example, I knew there was 2 known fish in the blinds, I would sometimes just peel here because I want to play pots with fish.
Absolutely.
But now I'm looking here, and this guy's a regular. I don't know these 2 guys, but they've both got over 100 big blinds, so I'm going to presume that until I know better, I'm going to presume regular, because most people are regulars. So I'm just going to 3-bet this hand here, because this guy I know pretty well, know quite a bit about him. His under the gun range is definitely pretty wide compared to a lot of regulars. He'll be opening all pairs, for example. He'll be opening down as low as maybe 10-9 suited, that type of thing. But I don't want to just peel there because I think I'm going to get squeezed too often, or I'm not going to hit the flop too well. He's going to see bet pretty well against me.
Yeah, totally. You can only flat there if you're actually deliberately hunting fish ahead of you and looking to capitalise on the multi-way prospects and implied odds of the hand against those fish. You can't be calling there just to play against the reg's opening range without initiative when you're 4 seats from closing the action. So you need to choose between 3-betting and folding. And as long as the guy folds to 3-bets a decent amount with that wide opening range, you want to have a polarised 3-bet strategy, which for listeners, for viewers rather, not a podcast anymore, for viewers means having 2 separate ranges of value and bluff and then flatting the hands in between. And that ace-9 suited falls nicely into a 3-bet bluff portion because the ace is a good blocker. So hands that they will not fold to 3-bet, you want to remove those hands, the combinations of hands from their range, and also the suitedness of the hand gives you some playability if you are flatted. So I think it's absolutely fine to 3-bet. Yeah,
I mean, there's some regulars that I wouldn't 3-bet against. If he was the sort of regular who's only opening say 12% under the gun, I probably wouldn't 3-bet there because I don't think we're going to get enough folds. But when we have these guys who are up at like 18% or higher, then I think we can. Here I would open this normally because of this Makulu guy, but because the big blind's so short stacked, I think it's just going to be a little bit too loose to open Jack Queen up. But normally,
one thing you actually can do here is that you can have a min opening range. If you're going to be folding some of your range to 3-bet here, one option you have is actually minning. That way you're not committed to calling a shove and you save more money the times that the guy does actually shove. Like if you think this is a profitable open, but you're just worried about getting shoved on and that makes it closer, then the min open is a good sizing adjustment to make here.
And I have no big issue just for Jack Queen off. If it was like regular, and a regular there, I'd probably just fold Jack Queen off in position. I have no issue. It was this guy on the button, this Makulu I saw without the big stack. That was I just wanted to play the hand because I think I'm going to be able to play pots with him quite often and do okay. Here I'm just going to c-bet because we have 2 overs, we have a backdoor straight draw. I guess I could check and just try and hit a turn card, but I think on this kind of dry board I'm not going to get enough folds from his ace size and things like that.
If a c-bet is profitable, okay, it's not always going to be the best line, but a lot of the time it is. I do have a criticism about your sizing, like a slight criticism. I think it's a bit big. Now obviously you have to fold because he's ripped it.
Of course, yeah.
But you need to just go half pot there, and the reason is that you can get all that money in with your value range or whatever by the river very easily, right? You don't need to build the pot. That's not really a consideration. And you should expect this player to play quite, we'd use this term called inelastic, like it doesn't really matter what your sizing is. If he's hit there, he's going to rip it on you because he's short. If he's missed, he's likely going to fold a bunch of hands. So by making it just a bit smaller, making it like half pot there, you kind of give like all the bluffs in your range a better risk-reward ratio, a better price, and you just save from burning a little bit of money those times he does rip it in, while probably achieving very similar fold equity against the air in his range. So I would definitely size no more than half pot.
So what would your thoughts be here against somebody who has a donkey tag? So this is a bad aggressive player, and the orange tag is like the tagfish type player, your classic tagfish type 22-8 type player. Yeah, I think this is a really miserable hand.
Really
we're getting ridiculous. We're getting like 5.5 to 1. So I'm just going to fold now because I'm going to time out. But what is your general understanding of that position?
Yeah, I think it is a miserable hand, and when you take a flop there, you're kind of wanting to flop trip 6s or 2-pair basically only, which is not great by any means. It's not very often that you're going to flop like 2-pair plus. So folding can't be that bad, but it also can't be that good. Sorry, it can't be that bad, but it also can't be like way better than calling either. It must be very close basically for those pot odds. When you're getting like 6 to 1, there's no way that calling can be bad there either. I think it's just a close spot and it doesn't matter too much. I'd probably call, but I don't think you're making much money by calling there. I think it's just barely justifiable due to the price.
I think I usually maybe just, as I say, head to folding. If the other guy was a weaker player, like a proper fish, I would probably then just hedge towards calling.
Yeah.
But because he isn't, and because even though he's a donkey, he's still under the gun, so his range is going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit narrower than usual.
Yeah, honestly, I don't mind the fold at all. I just think like it's such a terrible hand. If you just had anything remotely better, like 10-8 off, I would never fold there. That's actually a much better hand to play than ace-6 off, because we're not looking to flop top pair. If we have 10-8, at least we can flop like straight possibilities and things like that, and the pairs we do flop will be a bit less dominated. So many hands are calls there, and ace-6 off is actually towards the bottom.
This is the exact spot I have trouble with. Not with this particular hand. This is a really easy fold.
Right.
Well, this Prince Cassad is very loose aggressive with his like 3-betting, particularly around the bottom and the blinds. So what kind of strategy? I mean, obviously, apart from tightening up when he's on the button and having the cut-off, to me that's the first adjustment. But I do struggle with when I should be 4-betting, what hands I should be 4-betting, what hands I should be flatting with. That type of thing. This is the kind of thing that this player is going to be way better than me in this situation. Because that's what I'm actually going to do, because I want to talk about this. I'm going to sit out and actually talk about it with you, because it's a situation I find myself in enough of the time, really, in modern poker games. And I'm never that sure. I do definitely spew in this spot some of the time.
Okay. So first thing I would say is that it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong just because you hate the situation. It's a minus EV situation when the button 3-bets your cut-off range. One thing that I would do is tighten up, and that hand, what was it you had, like ace-6 off or something?
Ace-2 off.
Like, I'm never opening that there in the cut-off. I'm tightening my range to a point that I'm not...
Even when we have, like, fish in the blinds?
No, because if he's actually really, really aggro, then it depends how aggro he is. Like, if he's, like, just 3-betting, like, 8-9%, then okay, I think you can probably...
No, he's definitely up in the double figures, for sure.
If he's in the double figures, then he's probably just 3-betting you too often for you, because if you're relying on seeing flops with fish in position in order for that wider opening hand to be a correct adjustment, right? So if he's taking away that chance for you to see fish there, if his 3-bet stats in the double digits, the amount of time he actually 3-bets button versus cutoff when he knows you're opening wider with fish in the blinds, or whether he knows that or not, it's not a big deal. But if he does, then especially, he's going to be 3-betting much wider there than he will in general. So you're going to, by not seeing those flops, you're just like losing so much of where the original EV comes from. Like if you just see like 20% less flops than normal, that really hurts what was already quite a borderline marginal open that you added to your hand. So that's one side of it, is you need to tighten up even more and probably just be folding. Another thing I would do is min open my cutoff, because then it just makes his risk reward ratio worse for 3-betting me. I don't lose so much those times I fold. I do still get to get into heads up situations with fish by min opening sometimes. It's not like I can't do that. And I'm just burning less money when I'm folding those 3-bets.
Right, so what happens when I have ace-jack off here?
When you have ace-jack off here, how much is he 3-betting? Like,
it's hard to say, because I only have a few thousand hands on him. But I just get the impression that he's definitely one of the types of regulars who does 3-bet way more than standard in these games.
So if you have ace-jack off, it's probably going to be a call. It's not going to be super happy because you are out of position, but one simple fact here that sucks is that you need a flatting range, because if you just 4-bet everything that you don't want to fold, you're going to end up so unbalanced and just 4-betting way too much as a bluff. So the idea is that you have a kind of polar 4-betting strategy where you're flatting, or you're 4-betting for value with something like jacks plus ace king here. I'd probably 4-bet for value. Then I would flat the next tier of hands, which would be things like the best suited broadways, other suited broadways, the best offsuit broadways, ace jack and king queen off. Probably the bottom of my flatting range here, absolutely. Then I would flat like some pocket pairs like 10s, 9s, 8s. I would flat maybe hands like ace 9 suited, ace 10 suited, good suited connectors like 10, 9, jack 10 suited. And then I would look to 4-bet bluff the best hands that I'm not flatting. So I would, maybe ace-jack can fall into that. Ace-jack off is borderline. You could relegate that into your 4-bet bluffing range if you like, if you thought it wouldn't be a plus EV call. So you're looking to 4-bet for value, then call the next bunch, and then start 4-bet bluffing with the bunch that are not good enough to call, and then fold the bunch below that. And you're just developing a balanced strategy where by tightening your opening range, min opening, and using that sort of 4-tier system, 4-bet value, call, 4-bet bluff, fold, that you're just playing in such a way that negates his, it negates much of the EV of his profitable situation being in the button against the cutoff there and 3-betting a lot.
And from
it.
From the perspective of like a fast 4 player these days, what kind of 4-bet sizing should we be making? Because I might tend to go just around 21, 22 blinds, which would in this case have been around 630 to 660. What kind of size would you
That's not too bad.
use it.
Stack sizes matter as well. If you were deeper, you might need to go a bit bigger. Basically, what you want to do with your 4-bet is give yourself the best price you can in a bluff while not actually enticing your opponent to like flat you in position with a bunch of hands, because you don't really want that. So I think somewhere around 620, 630 is okay. Probably going somewhere between 2 and 2.5x his 3-bet size is good with these stack sizes, but it depends. Like if you ever read that this guy likes to flat 4-bets, then you probably want to go a bit bigger and also expand your value 4-betting range. If you don't really know, then that sounds fine to me. Just going about 610 here, 620, something like that would be okay.
Okay, excellent stuff. That's kind of this thing that, without question, steal and re-steal spots are something that, if I was to play these games regularly, I would need to polish up on, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I try not to put myself in too many games where this is happening. Because when I table select and play one table, if I was at a table with this guy to my left, I would need 2 really big fish to my right to even consider staying at the table. So it's not a situation I'm that used to or comfortable with.
Yep, another important point here is that this is just a bad table, and if you have a guy like that on your left, you really, like you say, you have to have exceptional other circumstances to justify staying at that table. You'll notice when you asked me about that spot, I didn't want to just say this is what you do with ace jack, this is what you do with ace 6. I wanted to talk about your strategy overall in the situation so you know how you're playing your range. And that's basically the thing to do. Like, people learn what makes a good 4-bet bluff in a vacuum. People learn what makes a good call in a vacuum. Once you've got that under your belt, the next kind of step is to understand what your overall strategy is and how you're going to play your range here so that you're not folding a disproportionately large amount of that range, that you're 4-bet bluffing a good frequency, but not so much that you're like ridiculously over bluffing the spot or whatever. And finding the best hand for the best job within that range and getting those frequencies right is the best way to sort of adjust to these reg wars. You do not want to fight fire with like lunacy. You want to just have a solid strategy out of position here. If you then find out that he just folds the 4-bets way too much, then you can add some 4-bet bluffs and try to exploit him like that. But you always want to be aware of your overall range, your overall strategy, and what kinds of hands fit what kinds of roles, basically.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that. I would say definitely my biggest leak, for want of a better word, would definitely be spewing those sort of spots. Without question, it's...
Yeah, and you need to be careful there as well, because if you just think about it in a vacuum and you just say to yourself, okay, I've got ace 8 off, I've got an ace in my hand, I'm just going to 4-bet this hand because it has a blocker. Okay, in that one hand, it might be okay in a vacuum, but what you're doing is you're then obviously playing a strategy where you're 4-betting ridiculously wide. And if people... I play 50, 100 NL and stars, and when I see people that don't know how to balance their 4-bet ranges, I'm shoving unbelievably wide in their face as an exploitative adjustment. And it works pretty well, so you need to be careful.
A situation I do here, when he like makes this sort of sizing, I usually, against regularity, I think people c-bet way too often in these spots, so I prefer to call and then just check shove flops, because he's not going to have a hard time. When you see on forums all the time, my theory here is I'll play it how I would play it, and clearly I'm not going to check shove this flop. But I think people, you see it on forums all the time, he can't have this, he can't have that, so I like trying to have hands that people think I can't have. When you see it on forums quite regular, like he can't have aces or kings here because he would just get it in pre. So I like to try and have hands that I know regulars think I can't have. Well, I'm not sure if I should
bet that turn, actually.
I should just bet that turn.
Right, when he checks back, he's typically going for like pot control with queens, kings, jacks quite often there, or he's giving up, and it's unlikely you make too much money by inducing bluffs. You kind of want to get value from the showdown kind of hands, I think. So I probably bet turn, bet river. Now I definitely would bet river because I think it's too likely he checks back some kind of like hand like kings, queens, something like that. Going back to pre-flop, it's kind of interesting. Like, okay, you can like throw in deception plays into your game if you want, but oftentimes the reason that people expect people to shove with aces there pre is because it's simply going to be higher EV in a lot of situations, in most situations actually. Because if he's 4-bet bluffing a lot, right? If he's 4-bet bluffing a lot, then there's an argument for like slow playing some of your bigger hands as an exploitative adjustment. But if he's just 4-betting like a lot of value combos there, then the value you lose by not stacking queens because the board comes ace XX, or not stacking ace king because ace king bricks the flop because you have 2 of the aces, or not stacking kings because an ace comes on the flop or whatever, not stacking jacks because a queen and a king come, all these situations cost you a hell of a lot in EV. So while there's some value to deception, there's usually not enough value to deception there to make it flatting better than just getting the money in, because the raw EV of shipping there should just be better, unless, like I say, he's 4-bet bluffing too much and then spewing post flop when he 4-bet bluffs. So I think you need that read to play the hand to flat the 4-bet.
No, and I didn't have that read there. I was just doing it because I think it's not going to be that hard. I mean, if he knows anything about me, so because a lot of people do know I'm quite nitty in these games because I've got a lot of videos of me playing Snap, and I don't know. I kind of just thought there. I think people c-bet way too much, but you're right. When I flop the board there, there's almost nothing he can have. So I do understand that, but because I've got 2 aces, it's going to be way less likely that an ace is going to hit. So I think he's going to see.
I'm not just talking about that situation. I'm talking about the times when he has ace king. Right, there's 8 combinations of ace king. Even when you have 2 aces, that could be a big part of his range that he's almost certainly 4-bet calling pre. And most of the time, they will just miss the board. It'll come like 8-4-3, and you're probably right that you do get he c-bets too much, and on average, and you make another bet from those c-bets for sure. But the value that you're losing by not getting aces in pre in loads of different situations is actually quite bad. Like, that was an extreme one where you flop an ace. That is not going to happen often, but there are other situations that are bad as well for not getting the money in. So I would definitely revert to just shoving over that 4-bet there all the time, unless I had a read that he is just bluffing loads and is folding to the 5-bet loads, or that he spews loads post-flop in 4-bet pots or something. Like, your play is definitely not bad under those circumstances, but I think all else being equal, it's going to be higher EV to shove.
And what did you think of the c-bet with the ace-king on the board that missed? I did it because I had the backdoor flush draw and the 2 overcards.
Hand history, because I didn't quite catch.
Okay, well,
I was ranting too much to catch the action.
We'll sit out in a moment, because there was 2 spots where I c-bet both. Cool. One worked, one didn't.
Okay.
So we just play this hand out, then we'll go back and look at them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was on this left table.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's going to come up. Yes, it did.
So we open his king, get flatted. Yeah, I love this c-bet. I mean, okay, so you've got a few options here. You've got, I'm not saying they're all good, but you could check call, you could c-bet, you could check fold, right? Those are the 3 main options that spring to mind. Let's go through them. Check fold, absolutely not. You have way too much equity and way too much showdown value here to consider just checking and folding this hand. So the question becomes, do you have enough showdown value? And do you know what you're going to do on turns and rivers? Are you going to make it to showdown enough? Do you know how many streets you should call here to check call? Like, if you ever read that this guy bets flop and then gives up all the time, you can just check call flop and full turn. Great. Printing EV. That would be the best line. If you have a read that he bluffs ridiculously over 2 streets and then gives up rivers, then you call twice. But if you don't know this guy and his tendencies, and you don't know how likely he is to make what Poker Tracker 4 calls the float flop bet, right, where the opponent bets the flop after the flop raiser checks, if you don't know that, then you kind of just need to c-bet here, because you can make a bunch of mistakes by check calling X streets when you don't really know what you're doing here. And undoubtedly a c-bet is really high EV. You can even make better hands fold by the river. There are a bunch of turn cards that improve your equity and your fold equity, like any ace, any king, any queen, any jack, any heart. So many great turns for you here. So unless you've got a really good read and reason to check call, then you need to c-bet, and check folding is just out of the question.
See, if I didn't have 2 hearts on the board, I might not have c-bet there. So only the backdoor flush draw was the tipping point for me to c-bet. If I'd have had ace king with the ace of clubs, I may well have gone more likely to go for a check call there than I would have a c-bet, because I think just the overcards and the backdoor straight draw for me isn't quite enough. I'm not going to pick up enough turn cards that I'd feel comfortable firing a second barrel on.
Yeah, you could break your range up that way. You could check call ace king for a street. I certainly wouldn't check fold ace king on this flop ever.
No, I wouldn't check fold. Check folding wouldn't be what I'd be doing. It's just whether a bet or check is.
With you. So I think you can check ace king without the ace of hearts here. It's a decent way of breaking up your range and having those as check calls, but c-betting this hand, that could be okay. I mean, check calling this hand is not bad, don't get me wrong. I just think it's such a, maybe you want to use this as the ace king portion of your range that tries to make your opponent fold better hands by the river, because it has the ace of hearts and it blocks him having the nuts on loads of turns, and it gives you more fold equity. So I think that's a sensible way to break up your range. Yeah, it's not that I think a c-bet would be minus EV. Without the ace of hearts here, it probably would still be just about plus EV, but it's probably sensible to check call that ace king and c-bet this one for those reasons. Yeah.
So then we have the second one over on this table, which is a pretty similar situation, but we're in position this time. And on your 3-bet this time, this guy is, I checked his stats, he was my stats, I had him, which aren't 100% accurate, but I had him down as 55-15, so he's a pretty big fish. So a 3-bet for what I suspect going to be very clean value pre-flop.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you should have quite a wide linear 3-bet range in these spots. You should just be using like the top whatever percent of hands you think you can 3-bet for value to both A, isolate the fish, and B, just get more money in the pot against his weaker range. So definitely fine, I like it. And
I was torn between checking back here and c-betting, but again I went for the c-bet, 2 overcards and a backdoor flush draw was enough for me to think, well, I can c-bet here, and if he sticks around with, who knows, pocket 6s, pocket 7s, those types of things, I'm going to suck out on them plenty of the time. What I don't want to do is check back, miss the turn completely, have him bet into me, and then feel kind of like painted into a corner where I have to fold. So I kind of wanted to keep the initiative up. I think it's an okay bet. I'm not sure what the sizing, it was like just less than half pot.
Yeah. I actually think this is like really close. I think like checking here is definitely reasonable because he basically folds most worse hands and continues with all better hands in this spot, which was kind of the same as the last time, but here we're in position, so we can definitely see the turn for free, and we can definitely get at least to the next street for free. If he starts leading the turn card, honestly, you're going to have to just call most turn cards and just go from there. It depends if you... Wait, what was his stats? It's how passive he is that really matters here.
He just got a big... The only thing I know about him is what I do when I was grinding these games was at the end of every session, I'd just do this and I'd go through every hand, and any player that I didn't have a stat on, I didn't have a like this guy, for example, I'd then go and find him in my hold'em manager. And if I had, say, more than 200 hands on him, I would just type in his, say, like 2014. And if I had anything else, like just say for example he had a really low c-bet, I would just type in low c-bet or something. But that's kind of just how I did it, because in the absence of a HUD, anything's better than nothing. So
definitely. So what was that guy's stats? It was like
he was just 50-15, 55-15.
Yeah. So against a player like that who's like probably passive, like I'd probably just about favour just c-betting here and protecting my equity, like picking up the pot a bunch. That's fine. Against someone aggro, you cannot bet fold here. Absolutely not. It's horrible.
But I wouldn't have done if he was somebody who had a donkey tag, somebody who I thought had bad aggressive. I wouldn't. I mean, I maybe still would have c-bet, but then I wouldn't have folded against this guy.
Back 100% of the time against anyone who's like aggro here, because you just make so much more money from the rare that way, like inducing, and you have so much showdown value, so many turns that you like. Definitely check back here against anyone that's got a smidgen of aggro in their game. Against a passive, just c-betting for protection to pick up the pot and not being in that turn spot where you kind of have to fold. And sometimes
I didn't expect him to raise very often. I kind of thought the worst case scenario is he calls, and then
you
have to decide whether to continue on the turn or not.
Yeah. So if he's aggro, you're sort of torn between like c-betting and calling it off or checking back. And while c-betting and calling it off isn't horrible if he's aggressive, checking back's much better, because even though he's aggro, he's still going to fold a bunch to your c-bet with air, right? And you actually get him to spew with air when you check back on the turn. So
I agree. If he had the donkey tag, if he was like a 55-40 or something, I would have absolutely checked back there.
Definitely.
But against this guy, I don't expect him to bluff raise me ever. If he does raise me, he's just going to have the absolute worst. He's going to have some kind of top care or better. Yeah,
mistakes. Yeah, for sure. I think it's a fine plan. Yeah, if he was an unknown, you just didn't know anything about him, I would also check back, just because it's such a travesty to bet fold mistakenly here. So you need to know he's passive.
Yeah, specifically because he has the fish tag, which usually means pretty passive and like stationary. So obviously it's not good if it's a station, because we're not going to get too many folds from better hands. But I think we've got enough equity to not worry about, you know, if he calls with, like, say, some kind of pair, we're going to suck out a ton of the time. So I'm not too worried about when he calls and when he raises.
Yourself from that turn spot where you sometimes make mistakes, and also just protecting your equity, because if he has like Jack 10 here, he has a bunch of equity against you even though you have the best hand. So making those hands fold, if you're not making an error by bet folding yourself, is absolutely fine. So I think we're on the same.
That's kind of how I saw that. Excellent stuff. Let's crack on. This is what I quite often do with my students. They'll record like an hour's worth of play, and if we get more than 15 minutes through it, not much has happened, because I just think it's a really good way to... I mean, the live sweat isn't, but if this was reviewing a video of mine, I'd imagine we'd struggle to get through more than 10 minutes of it, because there's...
Definitely. And that's the way it goes. I always say to my students, record a video, they say, right, should it be like an hour long? I'm like, if you want to be in a coaching session for 9 hours, then yeah, you can have an hour video. That'll be okay.
I usually try and make them go for maybe like for at least 45 minutes, because you just never know. Sometimes If they only record one session, you need to record a long one. But I typically tell people just record loads, and then we review the one where you feel you played the worst.
Yeah,
because that's when you're going to get the most from me. Because we're going to be really attacking your weak. We're going to see a lot of your weaknesses there. Now here, I'm not going to. This is where I use exploitable sizings, or not exploitable, but I don't care about having bet sizing tells. I usually just open min raise or 2.5x, but when there's fish in the pot, I'm going to open that a little bit bigger.
And that's not even exploitable because you're doing that with your whole range, right? You're not like opening one size with aces and another side with
no. It's going to I'm just doing my whole range because of the people who are to go behind me.
So it's not even exploitable at all. It's just a sensible sizing adjustment with your range to capitalise on the fact there are fish in the blinds. So for sure. I was just going to say about what we were just talking about. Yeah, one reason I switched to the sort of, for my primary coaching session, doing like the tagging system where they tag focus areas and hold a manager poker tracker, is that you can control exactly the spots you're going to talk about that day. So if you want to hone in on a focus area, you don't have to hope it comes up in a video. You can just use hand history review, but it's not random review. It's not hands that they've just picked out because they got coolered. It's hands that you've instructed them to. So I definitely recommend trying that out as well. If you're ever doing a session where you just really want to work on one thing, it's like a meta coaching video. This is kind of cool. I've never like discussed coaching in a video with anyone before. I've kind of just been the coach. So it's kind of nice.
I'm just giving up here when this tag comes off. A 3-bet, then a C-bet, I'm a good shot. We can definitely rep. And now when he calls, I'm kind of just done with it.
Yeah, I mean, like your fold equity is just so minimal now. Even the 10x part of his range is never folding. You beat anything that would be folding at showdown. So just check and accept you're probably going to lose the hand. Yep.
And here against this queen, I mean, obviously we're not going to fold for the 2-8s, but I mean, I don't think that's ever going to be a good C-bet on that board with 2-8s.
I think I might even fold for that tiny bet. You know, like your hand is just so terrible. I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but you're probably going to face another bet on the turn. So like getting to showdown is going to be really difficult here. Here we make one of the best turn cards for us.
Yeah, I'm still going to fold.
And we're still going to fold. So I think even though we're getting like 6-1 on that flop, we should still fold a hand as terrible as 2-8s on that board. Like it's.
So what's your thoughts on this right table here with 3-betting getting it in? It's an unknown. He hasn't got many chips. We obviously can't just call and set mine.
You can probably call and then play good flops favorably just about, or you could just ship. I don't mind just shoving, honestly.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking shoving's going to be better than calling, because I mean,
yeah, don't 3-bet small, like either just here or flat.
No, I wouldn't ever 3-bet like 250 or something, because you're just going to get peeled way too often.
Yeah, exactly, and then you're out of position in a bloated pot, and it's just really awkward. Like shoving is absolutely fine. It's clearly better than folding. Is calling better than shoving? I don't think so. I think I just shove here. Like I wouldn't say calling's like you're not just set mining. If you call there, you're accepting that because the stack to pot ratio is so small, there's so little left behind. You're probably going to have to be looking at ways to get it in unfavorable textures that don't have aces, kings, and queens and that kind of thing. And your argument there would be, you know, calling and playing that way is higher.
So how would you get it in then? Just say we did call there and it came down like 8-4-2.
It's check shove.
Would you check shove?
Yeah. I mean, you can check call if you think he's really aggro and let him bluff future streets, but giving free cards when your equity is very vulnerable is not ideal. And I think that oftentimes people will bet call ace, king, ace, queen there as well. So I'd definitely just check ship favorable textures. Yeah. But I like the shove free. I think it's just better.
And I think the argument for check shoving that I would make against check shoving the flop is that how often are we actually going to get called by worse when we do check shove? If he's got like $8 behind or something, how often do you think we get called by worse?
Not that often, but it doesn't matter that much because there's so much dead money in the pot and his bet already and so little left behind that your main priority isn't actually to get called by worse. It's just to protect your equity and pick up the pot when you've got the best hand load of the time. And you will still get called by like lower pairs on the board that are under sevens and ace, king, ace, queen sometimes as well. So you don't need to be getting called by loads of better hands for check shoving flop to be plus EV after you've defended.
What's your thoughts on overbetting here? I'm going to go for the overbet. What's your thoughts on it?
What happened in the hand? What was the action?
It's just limped pot and I've just gone basically pot at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's okay to overbet this spot.
I don't think he's going to fold an 8. I don't think he's going to fold a jack.
Oh, he's a fist as well. Yeah, okay, yeah, I like it. I mean, he's never going to fold a jack, certainly. Yeah, I like the overbet here. That's definitely good. And now you're just you block the hand that beats you as well. Oh my god. The guy just really just like raise and stack off with a flush on a Wow.
This is why we like 888, sir.
This is good, yeah. I mean, you actually blocked like the one hand that beat you there with a straight flush, though. Just kind of like a nice icing on the cake. It's like, hey, I block the epic cooler. Like, yeah, I like the overbet against the driller there for sure. It's just too many hands. He's going to play badly. But I mean, okay, a bit on game selection. Like I play on stars. A lot of my students play on stars and things like that. And I don't actually remember the last time I saw a play that bad. And that must be the difference between playing on a site like 888 and playing on stars, you know.
You see stuff like that regularly. You see stuff that just boggles your mind. You really do.
Like my students would be salivating right now. They'll be wanting to switch over to 888 as soon as they watch this.
That's why I try and get lots of people to do it. A lot of my students shout at me now because I'm like filling the 10 and M pool with all my students. It's just getting saturated with little mini edgy times. I'm going to see a bit here for value, and I'm going to be happy getting it in against novice.
Yeah. And you also need to protect your equity because, again, like there's still a lot of bad turn cards, and you have to.
I'm kind of hoping Kalu gets out of the way here and novice shoves on me. That's kind of what I was hoping happened, and now we're just going to. I think it's definitely getting thinner on the turn, but I still think there's too much value to not shove.
And also, like if you check, you have to check call, and you definitely do better against his calling range than against his betting range because he's a fish. So you want to be the one doing the betting. It's better for you when the money goes in with you as the aggressor and not him. So if you can't check fold, you need to shove.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, yeah, he's going to have a queen there some of the time.
Sure.
So what? It's just tough shit when he does.
Yeah, like people watching this might think things like people have misconceptions when they first start playing poker. So really new players might think, oh, this coach can't be that good. They both wanted to do something that got them, like they lost the pot. But, you know, you have to appreciate that you're against the guy's range there. There's a lot of other pocket pairs. There's a lot of you in there. It's not just going to be Queen X that he calls that turn shove with. In fact, you should be close to 50%. But here's the thing. Even if you only have, say you only had 33% equity, it would still be correct to shove the turn. That sounds weird, but it's true. Because the alternatives are both worse. Check folding is worse than that. Because if you check and then fold and you only need like 28% to call the bet or whatever, then you're making a mistake. And if you check call, you're putting the money in against a stronger range than you need to because you should be the one doing the betting. He should be the one doing the calling. He's a fish. His range is wider that way. So even if you're not a favourite there, that you're not value betting, you still need to shove the turn. It's a peculiarity of the spot.
So we're going to look at both these hands again in a moment because I'm going to end up losing both pots by the looks of things. But I just want to run my thought processes.
Okay, let's set out these hands and wrap up then, and that'll be a good
okay. So I hear I'm giving up on this one now. I'm going to explain why I did what I did, just to see what your thoughts on it are. Because this isn't a hand I typically squeeze, but I'll explain why in a moment. And I'm tempted now, when he checks back, I mean, I think he's going to bet a king most of the time, so now I am tempted to bluff.
What happened pre-flop? You 3-bet?
I squeezed. He opened, he called, I squeezed because I didn't want to get squeezed by him. I c-bet the flop.
Turn check
he called and then
honestly,
check.
I think this line gets called way too often, like bet, check, bet. I feel like fish are not folding pocket pairs here very much. I don't necessarily like bluffing here unless you actually think he's a reg capable of making a fold with like pocket nines.
I have no idea about this player whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think it's plus EV, honestly. Like if you bet like 2/3 pot, you need like 40%.
I was thinking of betting like 9, something like that, just to get me off hands like 10s, jacks,
yeah,
9s.
I'm not convinced that you do at all get people off, especially on a softer fishier pool. I'm just not convinced. Like I would not be surprised at all if he calls 8s there, because fish generally do not like to fold to a line of bet, check, bet. They just perceive it as weak a lot of the time. That's my population read. I could be wrong because I don't know how this pool plays, but generally speaking, I'd only make a bet, check, bet, bluff line against like a weak passive fish or against some kind of regular that I knew was actually thinking on a meta level.
And that could be a definite leak of mine, because I'm just looking at that there thinking, I just don't think he has a king, so
no, I agree, he doesn't have a king that much.
Anything that's not a king.
Right, we can discount king X from his range for sure, but I guess I just don't think he's folding the pocket pair portion enough, and he will still have a king sometimes for you to bet there. He can have missed spade draws that he will fold, so that makes it somewhat closer, that there's flush draws that actually beat your hand, like ace-x of spades. That makes it closer for sure. I don't think it's horrendous to bet. I just worry that fish aren't folding like those hands exactly often enough to that line, because they've seen you check, they're like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and they're getting the showdown right now, so they're usually, if they're fish, very happy to click call there.
So I wanted to bring the hand up, but for some reason HA8's still having its issues. I can't do it. The reason that good, we can now. We actually can. I don't typically squeeze here with a hand like Jack Queen. I'd rather see, especially with an unknown and somebody who knows a weak play, I'd usually rather call here, but because this Prince Castle guy who knows aggressive,
Yeah,
I did squeeze here because I didn't want to get squeezed by him.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's fine. But
that's fine, yeah. I mean, if you have like a fish in the blind or a tight player in the blind, this is a clear call because
yes, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that the squeeze was going to be okay.
And you would use, again, I'm going to like zoom out and talk about our whole strategy here because this is kind of what I like to do. If we had like king queen off, king jack off, that would be a fine squeeze with a fish in the blind because it's just not a great hand to flat multi-way. This is a fine hand to flat multi-way. So as long as our squeezing range under normal circumstances favors like offsuit cards a bit more, that's great. And then suited cards, we can only make squeezes when we have adverse conditions for flatting, like Prince Castle being in the big blind. That puts us off flatting, it puts us back into squeeze territory.
Excellent. That's exactly how I saw it. I just wanted to double check because, again, these are the spots that, before the video I said I wanted to talk about these kind of spots because I think I'm getting plenty, right? But you just never know. And having someone like you, I was too good opportunity not to discuss these things.
Of course, yeah. That's what we're here for. So.
Yep, so I enjoyed that one. And then this one, hopefully the replay's going to come up. I don't typically flat 10-9 against under the gun. A noob fish, and presuming it's going to be a regular, it's just decided to have a fishy name.
Yeah, but, that's purely a reg. Like, there's no way in hell that's not a reg. Like, noob
no.
fish, 1, 2, 3. With
but
a
because this guy's in the big blind with the $16.12 stack, it kind of made me want to play. And I didn't think I could check fold this flop because we've got. I don't think our pair's too good, but I think we have too much equity to just check fold.
Got to check call.
And then we fold to a double barrel now.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me just see pre-flop. What was the sizing? Was he?
He made it 80 something. At the minute, there's a bug on 888. Since the update, people used to click 3/4 pot, and it was almost 2.5x. But currently, the 3/4 pot is now, because of the bug on 888, it's coming out as 86.
Okay, so it's almost 3x. I don't think I can quite call here from the small blind.
Even with this fish in the big blind.
Couple of things. Like, one is that we don't know how big a fish this is. We don't know if he's like such a severe fish that he's coming along all the time, or he's got a 50% VPIP. He could just be like a 30% VPIPper, which doesn't help us that much. And secondly, he's only got 50 big blinds, so that really cuts your implied odds from playing a pot. And thirdly, your position is horrible. So I think you have to fold here. I think like Queen Jack or something suited you could call. It's got enough top pair flopping potential to help you.
So what if he had just 2.5x, which I presume is what he was wanting to do because of
I
this.
think you can call there. If he 2.5x is it just about? Yeah, I think you can call there.
So you think just the extra half a big blind makes a big difference then?
Yeah, I mean your pot odds are huge here. Pot odds are a huge factor because what's happening here when you make a call that's plus EV is that it's very marginally plus EV, right? The spot is extremely close. So it could be that your investment here, right? Your small blind's 15, you're having to pay 86. So your investment's like 71 BBs, right? Sorry, 71 cents. So it could be that on average you get like 76 cents back out of the pot because it's such a finely plus EV call. And then if you make your pot odds worse or better, it can totally swing that, and then suddenly your risk reward ratio is like way more favorable. I mean, these spots are thin. You're not making more than a few cents when you make a call like this in the short term, in the long term rather. So, you know, it can make a big difference.
So if we were playing the site where we had stats, what kind of stats would you want this big blind to have with this stack size to encourage you to come along?
Probably something like 50 or 60 VPIP, to be honest, with this stack size versus this open size.
And if he had 100 blinds, you'd be more comfortable if he had like a 40 VPIP?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. I've genuinely got a lot from that. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure the people who normally watch my videos
it's fun.
will get a ton from this. They really will.
Cool. Do we have that website detail? I just want to like rant one final time about
yes, I was just about to
what's on there.
Yeah. There we go. Again, if you just want to run through that for people, then
so on my website, I'm actually been kind of like bad with it because I've taken a big break from writing poker posts on my site. I used to do it all the time about life and stuff as well. If you're interested in like philosophy, poker, chess, anything, I'm into all these things that involve logic. But I've been poker book, so I've been like so out of sync with it. But I promise I'm about to get back into writing on my website all the time. So if you want some free poker content, I've also got my podcast available on my website, the Carrot Poker Podcast, that you can also find on iTunes and on YouTube. And yeah, my name's Pete, aka Characters. If you want to hit me up, you have any questions or want to talk to me about video ideas or private coaching, then check out my website, send me an email to admin@carrotcorner.com. as you can see there, and continue to watch Reggie's channel, because it's obviously awesome, and I'm sure you guys are getting loads out of it. I mean, I can tell you, having coached him in this one session, he's definitely a competent player that you guys can get a lot from watching. So we both hope to see you guys on our channels in the future, I guess, don't we? And it's been a pleasure doing this today.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I hope we can do it again sometime, because I've definitely got something from it. So
Definitely.
who knows, I might even pay you some money. I might even ask you to look over me. Well, excellent. No, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Okay, man. No worries.
Cheers, buddy. You take care now.
You too.